The next item of business is the Commissioner's Report. Commissioner Maher, please provide your report.
I will have a number of presentations as part of my report today, and I would first ask if David Jesperson would come forward and make your way to the front of the room for an introduction of our 2024 Nebraska Teacher of the Year.
I really wish I could do this every month. We'll work on that. So as you all know, if you've all been through the cycle at least once, the Teacher of the Year process is a large process that we go through every single year. And looking for the 2024 Teacher of the Year was no different. We had almost 100 nominations from across the state, and I'm talking about across the state. We had Falls City to Scottsbluff. We represented every single one of your districts in multiple nominations, and we had small schools, large schools. Almost every district had some nomination come in. What's really neat about our nomination process is that it is open, which means that anyone can nominate their teacher. I'll probably be coming back to the board in March to announce the push for the 2025 Teacher of the Year nominations. But it is a neat process because as we went through the nomination process, we noticed that the majority of these nominations were coming in from either students or fellow teachers. We did have many from principals and superintendents and things like that, but the ones that were probably the most powerful were the ones that came from groups of students and fellow teachers wanting to honor their folks. From there, the teacher then has to agree to go through the process, which is an arduous process, an application process to become Teacher of the Year. We had about a dozen folks apply. And from there, we had our 3 finalists, and Scott Phillips emerged as the 2024 Teacher of the Year, a math teacher from Aurora Middle School, and this will be his first opportunity to address the board. Scott.
There it is. Oh, there's my family. Kind of a funny little story here real quick. During my interview, that's the exact same thing that happened. And the whole board of panel that was interviewing me, they all went, "Aw," and I was like, "Yep, good start." Okay. Thank you, David, for the introduction and for the board for allowing me to come talk to you today. I am beyond honored. As Patsy was saying earlier, just very humbled to be here. It's kind of a weird, as a teacher, you kind of just do your job for a lot of years, and you know you're doing a good job with it, and you hear a lot of good things from parents and community members and those type of things. But just to be recognized in this way is something that's pretty special. So I really do appreciate the process it took to get to this moment today. So my name is Scott Phillips. I am a 7th grade math teacher at Aurora Middle School. Currently in my 14th year of teaching middle school math. So hearing Jacob talk about math a little bit was definitely tugging at my heartstrings as a teacher. And I just know the importance of it, just the ability to get kids excited about 7th grade math is one of my passions for sure as a teacher. So I'm going to kind of run you through a little bit of my journey, what led me here today. And so I went to high school in Hays, Kansas, at Hays High School. The very first seed that was planted in my mind to become a teacher was from my high school track coach, and we were on the bus. I was helping a classmate with their homework, and they were just like, "Just give me the answer, give me the answer." And I said, "That's not gonna help you when you take a test or you need to know what you're doing." And he just turned around and he said, "You'd be a really good math teacher." And like at the time I was a junior in high school, and I wasn't thinking, "Oh, I'm going to become a math teacher someday." And I went to a year of college to become a television broadcaster. I was going to do television. My first year of college was at Fort Hays State University. I grew up in Hays, and so it just seemed like the right choice to attend the same college where I grew up. Just kind of a moment in my freshman year of college where I realized this is not what I want to do. And it wasn't just because of the profession. It was just because of the fact that I felt like I wanted to make a difference in a different way. And so I transferred to Kearney. And when I went to Kearney, one of the very first people I ran into was kind of at a desk that were asking, "What do you want to do?" And so I was getting signed up for classes, and I was like, "Well, I want to become a middle school teacher." And so I'm kind of a rare breed. I am endorsed 4th grade through 9th grade, not necessarily a thing that all universities offer. And when I was at UNK, I was able to be endorsed in middle school education. So I am actually endorsed to also teach a business class where I could teach like computers or technology and that kind of stuff. So I go to the lady and she's like, well, what do you want to teach? I was like, well, what are the options? And so I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that. I was like, well, I like math, so I'll be math. And I think that kind of goes back to, though, my experience as a kid. My dad and I did a lot of construction type stuff when I was a kid. And so I was never like in an advanced math class. I'm honestly not the smartest math guy. It's one of those things that I think if I can relay that message to my students, that it's okay to not be a math guy, right? I mean, none of us are born and they're like, hey, here's a math person, right? It's something that I think in society today gets a little bit misinterpreted, as far as our brains are either wired to be mathematicians or we're wired to be musicians or whatever. And my job as an educator is to get the kids to understand that it's all together. It's okay to be a math person and be an artist or be a musician or be a little bit goofy or out there as far as that goes too. So what led me to Aurora was actually a connection I had with a friend of my sister. A retirement announced that day. They had like the cookies and the juice in the lounge. She knew that I was looking for a job, so she texted my sister, and my sister texted me, and I called my principal that day. And his first question was like, how'd you hear about that? Because it was literally that day they announced it. So I got my foot in the door early, and I've never looked back since. And I love teaching in Aurora. It's my first job. As far as my plan goes, it's going to be where I retire to. It's a great place to raise a family. It's an awesome community. While at Aurora, I got my master's degree in curriculum instruction from Doane University. And while taking classes at Doane, I made a lot of connections, and that's one thing I'll talk about a little bit today. Is I love making connections with people and getting to know people. Doane University, and met a professor by the name of Marty Fetch, and Marty was a huge impact on me, and just a really good educator. He kind of allowed me an opportunity to apply as an adjunct instructor. And that's one thing I've really enjoyed the last about 4 or 5 years, is working through Doane. After I got my master's degree, I was able to start teaching some classes through Doane. So in my summer times, I will spend about a week in Lincoln and a week in Omaha teaching current teachers how to better their craft. This is my family. And I'm just going to give you a brief overview of them. So my wife is a kindergarten teacher. She has taught in Aurora for 13 years. So I'm the veteran teacher of the family by 1 year. My daughters, I am officially a girl dad. So on the far right there is Taylin. She is a 4th grader, very creative. The other day she goes, Dad, I just love math. And that just made me smile. So in the middle, Traley is a 2nd grader, just a super kind, caring young lady, and I love all my girls. And then on the far left there is Trindle, and Trindle is our handful, the youngest child. We absolutely adore her and love her. She is our allergy kid. So during COVID, we were at home and we learned that she was allergic to a lot of stuff. She's allergic to peanuts, eggs, gluten, and dairy. So imagine you're at home, no restaurants are open, and you have to figure out how to cook for a child that just has all those allergies. So my wife is a saint, and she is an expert in that category now. So I'm just thankful for all of them. A handful of the pictures you're going to see today are from a student and a kid I'm actually currently coaching in basketball. He's a high school senior. His name is Ethan Raymakers. Give him a shout out because he's talking about trying to get kids excited about what they're going to do in their lifetime, and he is a really good photographer. And so when I found out that I was awarded with this, David's like, do you have any pictures of you teaching? And I was like, well, I don't really take pictures of myself teaching. So I had Ethan come by one day of class and take some pictures while I was teaching. So I wanted to make sure I gave him recognition for the pictures in the slideshow. Kind of a cool story about my wife's mom is she was also my preschool teacher. And so I grew up partially in Nebraska for a little bit, and then we moved to Hays, Kansas when I was in the 3rd grade. And my dad, he owns a commercial roofing company. He, like I said earlier, he taught me a lot about math growing up. He got promoted within his business, and he now is a part owner of his business, which we're really proud of him. To kind of give you a little bit of background with that, he has a 2-year degree from a community college in construction management. So I always tell my students, you don't have to go the traditional, 4-year route, and this, you can be successful through jobs like what my dad does. This is a picture of my family and I taken at the reception when I was awarded the Teacher of the Year. Okay, I'm gonna give you a little math lesson here, okay? So this is kind of my little spiel. I'm gonna nerd out like Jacob did. Okay, so if I take this paper and I fold it in half, you guys can be interactive here a little bit. What happens to the thickness of the paper? It doubles, right? Okay, so this is a very interesting question that I show my students. If I fold it again, it's gonna double again, right? And so now it's 4 times thicker than what it started with. And this is a visual of what we call in 7th grade math exponential growth, okay? And so the question I ask my students is, if I keep folding this theoretically infinite number of times, because obviously we all know that there's actually a proven fact that you can only fold this piece of paper like 7 times. But imagine if I fold it 10 times. If I fold it 10 times, it's now 1 centimeter. And if I keep folding it over and over and over again, the question is, how many folds would it take to get to the moon? It's okay. I'll get you off the hook here. Okay.
73 folds.
That's a good guess. That's 45. 45 folds. Okay. So, what I think about when I think about this question, first of all, it's amazing. Only 45 times you fold this paper and it's going to reach the moon, right? So think about the idea of the impact we can have in education. Because if you think about it, if I affect only 2 students, and then they go on and they affect and they influence 2 more people. And then all of a sudden, those 2 people go on, you know what I'm saying? Their exponential growth with that, only 45 times that happens, and we have literally reached the moon with what change we've made. And I go back to Mr. Harris on the bus. I go back to many moments in my educational career where I could be somewhere completely different right now, and it's because of what someone said. It took just moments. It took just seconds for someone to positively affect my life. So throughout the next year, I'm really excited to travel around the state. One of the most exciting things that David talked to me about was that I get a chance to talk to a lot of people that are getting into education. And that's kind of where one of my passions is. That's why I teach for Doan. It's fun sometimes giving up your summer to teach more classes, but I love that the connections I make and also the people that I meet. If I think about that, if I teach 10 teachers in the summer, teaching hundreds of kids, that's an everlasting impact that I can have in education. So throughout the course of the next year, I'm going to really focus on these 3 things to try to instill not just in new teachers, but veteran teachers, because I feel like that's something else that we got to retain really good teachers that are in our districts too. So the first topic of discussion that I'll have with them is the idea of habits. And so at the end of every basketball season, I give my students or my athletes a magnet they can put on their fridge that says, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. And we talk about the idea of being excellent. When are you excellent in anything? It's going to be when it's day in and day out. It's just those little things that add to big things and big changes. So I'm really a big believer in education on habits. And it's something that you're going to have bad days in education. You're going to have bad days in the classroom, but you can't let those bad days pile up. And you've got to use that as a learning opportunity as a teacher to become a better teacher. Here's his quote: "If you're not making mistakes, then you're not doing anything. I'm positive that a doer makes mistakes." And I think one of my biggest fears early in education was I was afraid of messing up, right? I was afraid of failing. And what I learned pretty early on, and some of you might have experienced this too, is math is essentially created to cause failure, and in little ways. Right? I mean, no student is going to go through a whole semester of math class and never miss a question. And honestly, if they're never missing a question, I'm not teaching them correctly, right? They should be failing every now and then. As a teacher, I should have a lesson flop every now and then. Because if I'm not, oh, that didn't work, and I'm not readjusting and doing what I'm doing as a teacher, then I'm also not getting better as a teacher too. So I tell the kids, I'll say, hey, that didn't work, that failed. And that's the nice thing about teaching middle school math is by 5th period, I can adjust it at least enough to where it goes pretty well. So I love this visual here because I think it's a really good idea of what my 7th graders deal with your life. So the top one is kind of what we think we all want to have, right? We think we all want to have this idea that things are going to be smooth and we're going to get to the finish line. And the one thing I point out with the students is the growth there is not really that big, right? If they come into my class every day, they get every question right, they move on, they get an A+, really did they experience growth, or did they experience learning? And the reality is the bottom picture. The reality is that we're going to have these highs and lows and these moments of our life that really define us, but also help us grow. And then also look at the growth of that bottom picture of how much further that little stick figure was able to climb. So I have a true story about this in my own life and my teaching career. Early in my career, I learned pretty quickly the importance of a 7th grade math teacher and the NISCA state tests. Okay, so I'm kind of, in some regards, preaching to the choir here a little bit. I had this test that I was giving to the students early on, and I remember taking them as a kid and having them in class. And being in a smaller district is a little bit nerve-wracking because when they put it in the paper for 7th grade math, and I'm literally the only 7th grade math teacher, right? It's kind of like, well, here's how Mr. Phillips's class did. So it's a high pressure situation, but I kind of thrive under pressure a little bit. So I really do, I do like build this up for the kids to be a really exciting thing. So my first year, I get the scores back, and I had 55% of kids that were proficient, and that would to me was like I felt like guilty. I felt responsible. I felt like I failed. And I was like, what did I do wrong with these kids? And so I really kind of reevaluated how I was teaching, how I was doing things, which standards I was teaching. I adjusted a bunch. And a few years later, I don't know how this even happened. I got 94% proficient. And I don't say that to boast. I just say that because that's what, like, making changes, that's where I got to. And then I was like, oh man, I have reached the pinnacle of teaching. I am literally the best teacher ever because I 4 kids didn't pass. And I just felt like I'm doing this exactly right. And then a few years later, I get 70%. And I'm like, wait, like I'm a better teacher than I was when I got 94%. So why all of a sudden is this score going down? And what happened in my mind was that 70% was amplified, and I kind of forgot about the 94%. And so like over the course of a career, it can be really easy to say like, man, like have I reached the pinnacle of what I'm gonna actually accomplish in my career? And what I've learned since then is that small changes over time do lead to big growth. And so you were asking one of the past teachers here about the impact they've seen on kids throughout their career. And I've been in education long enough now where I'm going to some kids' weddings. I teach in a smaller district, so I get invited to those weddings. Pretty awesome experience to see them graduate, to go on into the career field, and to be a part of those things. So just being able to see, not just the test scores or anything like that, but to see them be successful in life outside of school, I feel a lot of pride with that too. So the last and final thing I'm going to teach the current teachers and aspiring teachers is that balance is something that you have to continually work on. I'll be honest, that 94%, it took a lot of hard work, it took a lot of late nights, and it was at a sacrifice of my family. Honestly, when COVID happened, it was a situation for me to reevaluate and really what was most important in my life. And my biggest thing is I don't want my daughters to look back on my life and just say, Dad worked all the time. I want them to be a part of my job. And so if you ever get a chance to watch my YouTube channel, you'll see some videos with my daughters in them. And like I invite my family into my classroom essentially, and the kids love it. The 7th graders love it. We feel like we're all just part of the same family because of that connection. So it's a really cool experience. So this was hinted at earlier here, and this really kind of inspired me a little bit for the next year because it just came out. This story came out December 26th. And so Steve White was one of the newscasters that came to present me with the Teacher of the Year, and him and I know each other from a few different experiences before through education. And he had an article that came out about the teacher shortage in Nebraska as a serious issue. But I'm hoping I can help the pendulum swing in the positive direction with that. So this is one of my classes of my Dome class a few years ago in Omaha. And I want to talk about the young lady that's wearing the white t-shirt there. Student in my class, she teaches 7th grade math at Gretna Middle School. Tiffany is that she also was a 7th grader of mine. So I had her in 7th grade. And I'm looking at the class roster of that summer, and I see the name Tiffany Conrad, and I'm thinking, I don't know if that's the same gal. And so I messaged her on, I emailed her through this Donut account, and sure enough, she's like, yeah, I had you in 7th grade. And so like, it was awesome. I really do find a lot of passion in inspiring the future of education. And Tiffany is one of those students that I feel like I made a positive impact. And I'm not saying I'm the only reason she's a teacher now, but just the fact that she's teaching 7th grade, I can have an influence on her, is a pretty cool thing in education. So throughout the next year, I'm a true Midwest kid. I have flown 2 places in my life. I flew to Ohio and I've flown to Florida. And my family growing up, we didn't have a whole lot of money when I was a kid. And so we would go on vacation to Denver because it was about 5 hours away, and we'd go to Kansas City because it's about 5 hours away. So those are like the only places I've really been. So when I was told I get to go to all these different places and represent the state of Nebraska, I was thrilled and obviously excited for a lot of reasons, but mainly because I want people to know that Nebraska is a great place to raise a family. It's a great place to teach. I do feel a lot of support from my administration. And just being in a smaller community, it's a really cool thing. And the fact that we can have teachers receive these awards from communities that are, less than 5,000 people is a pretty awesome thing. And we're really focused on just the state as a whole. It's amazing. So I just want to thank you once again for letting me share with you today. I'm excited for the next year, and I'm hoping to bring back some pretty exciting news as the year progresses. Please feel free to keep in touch with me. I really do love building connections. I've already talked to a few of you for Lincoln recognition. So please feel free to reach out to me, talk to me, and I just love to get to know you guys.
Well, thank you, Scott.
Yep, thank you.
I hope you got a new suitcase.
A new suitcase?
Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah.
excited to have somebody of your caliber representing teachers, representing Nebraska to the nation and possibly the world. So thank you so much. We're excited to hear more from you this upcoming year. So I'm going to just open it up to comments and questions from my fellow board members.
May I start? Hi, Scott.
Hey.
Well, I was truly blessed to be part of the interview process. Just was very blessed. And what stood out in your interview, there's several things, was your creativity, your love for students, and your passion for the subject. So it was just, those things stood out for me, and I think you will project that as you go across the state and the nation.
Thank you.
So, and I'm also confident that you will represent very well the teachers in Nebraska. So that is encouraging to me. I think teachers will be very proud that you are representing them. And I think that's a big job and a big responsibility. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
And I loved your not the smartest math guy because I think those not the smartest math guys make the best math teachers. So
Thank you.
Thank you. And I wish you well.
Thanks.
I appreciated that you brought up the arts and music and said that all of those are part of each other, and that to convince kids early in life. Archimedes was a mathematician, and he also curated the music scale, which I'm sure you're aware of. So that they know that it's okay to go down and rehearse a play and then come back and go see Mr. Phillips about your math assignment because you don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so important. And you seem like the kind of person, the kind of teacher that I would have gone back to right away and said, I don't get this, and you would have helped me. So keep doing that and keep connecting it to everything that's going on at school, because that makes a difference. And that's the reason you are where you are today. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
It's so nice to meet you, and thank you for all you do. And I'm incredibly inspired. I love the way you incorporate teaching them life skills and social emotional skills, teaching them about failure and perseverance and grit. And, that's just, it helps them in their, be successful adults, in addition to learning math. And you obviously have a very creative approach, and I'm thrilled that you were selected and honored that you'll be representing Nebraska. So I hope it's a fun year for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Scott, you mentioned the things that you're going to focus on, and that you're certainly passionate about working with prospective teachers and providing professional education to people who are already in the profession. I guess if you had to narrow it down to one piece of advice that you would give to prospective teachers, what would it be?
I'll say this first for veteran teachers, that burnout is a possibility, right? And I think if you don't have that balance, that's something that you got to be aware of, because I keep coming back to it, but I got to a point in about 5 years ago in education where I just didn't know if I was going to finish out to the retirement age. And, to be here today is also pretty awesome, because it's like, okay, well, obviously I stuck it out. So just being able to, it's a very tasking job. I think it's something that you become very close to your students. And so if you see your students go through difficult things, that can be very tough. I hinted at it earlier, but being in a smaller community, if there is a tragedy in the community, it affects everybody. It's not just well, I didn't know them. I mean, everybody, and you're close to everybody. So that to me is a really special thing about teaching in a smaller town in Nebraska. And I would try to relay that message to the veteran teachers that, we are making an impact, and we are making a difference in a lot of kids' lives. And so to the aspiring teachers, I think it kind of goes back to what was kind of talked about earlier, but just the idea of being an educator is a lifestyle, right? I mean, you're kind of put in a little bit of a fishbowl. You have an opportunity to teach kids, but you're also kind of critiqued for everything. When kids see you at the grocery store in your blue jeans, it's a little weird. So I think it's one of those things that people are a little bit intimidated at first, or maybe they think, well, I've done school now for 12 years. I don't want to keep being in school. But just it's not as much that as much as what impact can we make in education. And I think it's not just about the quantity of teachers, it's about the quality of teachers that we continue to invest in. So I'm not afraid to tell 7th grade kids, hey, you'd be a really good teacher someday, because I know that made an impact in my life too.
I forgot something. I was at your kickoff there were a lot of us there. Whoops, I forgot that too. Anyway, when you were all finished giving your speech, the people around me, we were all saying, oh, he's so funny, he's got such a great sense of humor and all of that. And when I think of qualities of good teachers, that's one of the things that I put in my top 10, is that you can laugh with your students about yourself, about them, about world, things that are happening. And I heard that from you as a teacher, and I thought, oh, I want to have him as a teacher.
Thank you.
Well, Scott, we look forward to having you come back and hear some updates about your adventures and travels and the impact that you're making this year. So
thank
you. And yeah, congratulations.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, I will continue my report, although I'm reluctant to do so after listening to these three teachers. I hope